Shalom, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of our weekly Parshat HaShavua video class. Before I begin, I want to thank those of you who listened to the class last week and who sent me feedback and suggestions on how to improve it. I really appreciate that you took the time to do that. This week, I want to share what is an amazing insight and discovery by Rabbi Soloveitchik in terms of how the Torah relates to Sara, relates to Abraham's wife. If you want to pause the video for a moment and grab a chumash, now's a good time to do that. We are going to begin our study at the beginning of this week's Parsha, Parshat Lech, which is Perek Yud Bet, the 12th chapter in Sefer Bereshit, the book of Genesis. The Torah Parsha begins, of course, with God's commandment that Abraham leave his home and travel to the land that God will show him. And then the Torah tells us who Abraham took with him. In Pasuk Hey, verse 5, it says, Vayikach Abraham et Sarai ishto, v'et Lot ben Achiv, etc. Abraham took his wife Sarai. His name at that point was Avram. Her name at that point was Sarai, and his brother's son Lot, etc. Rabbi Soloveitchik, as I said before, makes an amazing discovery in terms of how the Torah refers to Sarai. And he's going to contrast that with some psukim that happen just a little bit later in the Parsha as how the Egyptians refer to Sarai. And there's something very important that we can glean from that comparison in terms of how the Torah views the relationship between husband and wife. So let's start with Rabbi Soloveitchik's understanding of what's going on. He notes that when Avram originally set out on his journey, in the pasuk that I just read, it says, Abraham took Sarai, his wife. Then, when he left Egypt, the verse, when Avram left Egypt after he had to go there because of the famine, and Sarah is taken captive, it says, and this is at the beginning of chapter 13, the pasuk says, Vayal Avram mi Mitzrayim hu v'ishto v'chol asher lo. From Egypt, Abram went up into the Negev with his wife, and the Torah does not tell us his wife's name. Now we know it's Sarah, but Rabbi Soloveitchik is quick to pick up on that distinction, and he says as follows. Whenever God addressed Abram about Sarah, he never said your wife, but your wife Sarah. When Abraham arrived in Egypt, we read, he said to his wife Sarai. But 2 verses on, it says, the Egyptians saw the woman, an anonymous woman. Her name is intentionally left out. Then the princes of Pharaoh also saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house. Again, her name is omitted. But when God acts to protect her, Pharaoh and his house were smitten with plagues al devar Sarai eshet Abraham, because of Sarai, the wife of Abraham. Rabbi Soloveitchik is noting here that when it comes to how the Torah, how God understands Sarah, Sarah is an independent entity. She is Abraham's equal. We're going to see in a moment that she may have actually been superior to Abraham, but she is Abraham's equal and an equal partner, and therefore God always calls her by her name, as opposed to the Egyptians who did not see a person when they saw Sarai. They saw an object. They saw a beautiful woman who they were not going to treat as an equal to Abraham. And Rabbi Soloveitchik makes that point. That was the difference, he continues, between the community of Abraham and the Egyptian community. Abraham looked upon his wife as Sarai, my ruler. The word Sarai from Sar, my ruler. Abraham never told her what to do. On the contrary, she told him what to do. She was not only beautiful, she was a spiritual figure on par with Abraham. God said to Abraham, quote, as for Sarai, your wife, you shall not call her name Sarai, but Sarah shall be her name, and I will bless her. So the first thing Rabbi Soloveitchik does is he contrasts the way the Torah talks about Sarai, always by her name, Sarai, princess, ruler, as opposed to the way the Egyptians talk about her, that woman, without giving her a name, seeing her as an object, not as someone who demands respect. That can explain why The pasuk I read earlier, verse 13, when Avram is leaving Egypt, it simply says he took his wife, because while she was in Egypt, she was just his wife. That's the way that the Egyptians looked at her. Her personality, or the way she was viewed by the people in Egyptian, underwent some sort of change, and she lost her identity as a human being, as a person, and just became sort of Abraham's second-hand, right-hand man, right-hand woman, if you were, without her own identity. And Rabbi Soloveitchik is saying the real way to understand the relationship between Sarah and Abraham, between Avram and Sarah, is that they were equal partners. And perhaps that is the way, not perhaps, that's certainly the way that we are supposed to understand the husband and wife relationship, that the husband and wife are equal partners in the development of their family. They each have their own unique personality, each have their own unique contributions to make, and each has to treat the other with respect. The way that Torah reminds us and sets up Avram and Sarah as the paradigm for a husband and wife, the way the Torah views the husband and wife, is by contrasting it to Egypt, and reminding us again that when it came to Abraham's relationship with Sarai, she always had a name indicative of her identity and unique personality, as opposed to the way the Egyptians saw her, just as an object. And Rabbi Soloveitchik points out 3 times in the Torah where this is highlighted. The first time in the Torah is when Sarah's name is changed to Sarai, from Sarai to Sarah. When God changes Avraham's name from Avram to Avraham, God says, from this point forward, your name you will be called Avraham. But then listen to what God says when he talks to Abraham about Sarah's name change. That's in verse 17, pasuk 15, Yud Zayin Tetvav. Vayomer Elohim el Avraham. God said to Avraham, Sarai ishtecha lo tikra et Shema Sarai ki Sarah Shema. This is very strange. God says to Avraham, as for your wife Sarai, you shall not call her Sarai, but her name shall be Sarah. A better translation is, her name is Sarah, ki Sarah Shema. Her name is Sarah. That's a better translation than the one I read earlier. What does that mean, her name is Sarah? When was her name changed? When it comes to Abraham, we know when his name was changed. But when was Sarah's name changed? So Rabbi Soloveitchik says the following. When Abraham's name was changed, Abraham cannot be Av Hamon Goyim, the father of many peoples, if Sarah is not simultaneously crowned as the mother of those people. So when Abraham's name was changed, and he got the hay to indicate that he was going to be a ruler, Sarah's name was changed, and she got the hay in her name to indicate that she was also going to be that ruler, bringing God's name to and recognition to the rest of the world. It could not be, Rabbi Soloveitchik argues, that even for a moment, Avraham was given some sort of priority over Sarah. So as soon as Abraham's name was changed, Sarah's name was changed. That's why God says to Abraham, your name is Abraham, and Sarah's name is Sarah. And the Torah doesn't tell us when that happened, because it happened at the same time, Rabbi Soloveitchik says, when Abraham's name was changed, to indicate that they were equal. That's number one. The second time is when Sarah tells Abraham to kick Hagar and Ishmael out of the house. She was concerned with the character, if you will, of the house. And Abraham doesn't want to do it. We understand why Abraham doesn't want to do it. It's his wife and it's his son. Nonetheless, God says, Kol asher tomar lecha Sarah shema b'kola. Listen to everything that Sarah does. Heed her voice. Listen to her voice. And based on that, the Midrash Rabbah notes that on this level, Sarah was superior to Avram. And finally, the third point that Rabbi Soloveitchik makes is when God tells Abraham that he's going to have a child. Also in chapter 17, Abraham says to God, Vayomer Abraham el Elohim lu Yishmael yichyeh lefanecha. Abraham assumes that the one who's going to take over for him, who his heir will be, is going to be Ishmael. And he says to God, and Abraham said to God, oh, that Ishmael might live by your favor. Meaning, he's the one who's going to take over. I hope that Ishmael is treated, that you find favor in Ishmael. And then God says, Vayomer Elohim, God says to Avram, Aval Sara ishtecha yoledet lecha ben v'karata eshemo Yitzchak. He says, this is verse 19. God said, nevertheless, Sarah, your wife, shall bear you a son, and you shall name him Yitzchak. The word aval seems to be out of place here. But again, staying with Rabbi Soloveitchik, he notes that aval is the most important word in this phrase. But your wife Sarah will bear you a son. Why are you talking to me about Ishmael? God says to Abraham, your wife is going to bear me a son. Your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you shall call him Isaac, and I will keep my covenant with him as an everlasting treaty for his descendants. Says Rabbi Soloveitchik, the key emphasis in this word is the word aval. God is explaining that his covenant cannot be realized without Isaac. Why can the covenant not be realized without Isaac? Because Isaac is the son of Sarah. Aval Sara ishtecha yoledet. Again, that phrase, Sarah, your wife, she's going to give birth. And that's the continuation of the covenant. It's not just you, Abraham. You have a son with Ishmael. That's fine. But this isn't only about you, Abraham. This is about you and Sarah as a partnership. And your heir must come from both of you because you are equal partners. So 3 times the Torah underscores that notion. Once when it comes to Sarah's name being changed, it had to be changed the same time as Abraham's. Second, when God tells Abraham to listen to Sarah. And third, when God reminds Abraham that his covenantal position is very much dependent on Sarah being part of the covenantal Brit as well. So again, the Torah here is reminding us about the importance of a partnership with husband and wife. And Abraham and Sarah are the paradigm. They set Bnei Yisrael in motion. So to recap Rabbi Soloveitchik's point, he's reminding us that Sarah and Abraham played an equal role in laying the foundations for the Jewish people. They were side by side, walking step by step, and God made sure to stress that to Abraham in terms of how the Jewish people were going to have their very, very beginnings. I would add that this analysis also reminds us that women and men play an equal role in continuing the Masorah, in teaching Torah, and in helping expand the spiritual and improve the spiritual life of Am Yisrael. I hope you enjoyed this shiur. I look forward to your feedback again, and I look forward to seeing you in shul. Shalom.